If you're in high school, a trade school, college, or just a young entrepreneur, today's episode is for you. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast, hosted by me, Brandon Davis. This is the podcast for young entrepreneurs who are looking to increase their life skills, network, and continue to grow both in their business and lifestyle. So today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 reasons why you should start a business while you're in college or are young. These 3 reasons are going to be very important. It's things that I've applied inside of my own life, and I've been able to see from some of my colleagues here in college how they've been able to apply it inside of their lives and business as well. Number 3 is going to be the most crucial piece of advice I have to share, arguably one of the most important things I've ever shared on the podcast or any guest has ever shared for this show. Guys, before we jump into the full swing of everything, though, I have an exciting announcement. I've been planning this for the past 6 months now, and we're just underway with recording. Over the next coming months, you're going to hear many interviews on the weekly Friday release date, where I go ahead and interview other young entrepreneurs who are in my network, be that here at BYU from some of the other businesses and their owners that I know, or across the entire United States. One growing issue that I recognized amongst many podcasts as an avid podcaster myself, as well as a consumer of many podcasts, sometimes as young entrepreneurs, it's very difficult to understand where a business went from and where they are today. I hear so many guest speakers inside of my university, as well as people inside of my network, that tell me this is where I was and this is how I got there. The issue with that is sometimes the steps in between are so unclear, they're outdated, or frankly, we just don't have as much advice as we need, very specific details in order for it to work perfectly for us so we can perfectly learn how they did it, not make the same mistakes, but continue to learn and grow. So in an effort to combat that issue, I'm going to be interviewing young entrepreneurs who are in the thick of it, who are still trying to make a name for themselves, who are trying to create an amazing business that helps many people and generates positive income. So these are people who may not be millionaires yet, but have extraordinary businesses that need to be highlighted and their practices need to be shouted out. So over the next coming months, expect episodes regarding that with young entrepreneurs. I'm incredibly excited to do these interviews. Many of these people have been in my network for years, and they have amazing things that they have created. So stay tuned for that. But guys, with all that being said, let's jump into today's episode. So for the first reason on why you should start a business while you're young, specifically in college, is for the resources. I want to tell you a little bit about BYU and the resources they offered me as a young business owner. And it's some of the most powerful resources that I've received up to date in my life. I'm 23 years old, and when I started my first business, and I'm going to jump into this a little bit farther, but when I started my first business at BYU, they rewarded me with what they call a validation grant. BYU basically gave me $500 when I started my business to go out and validate the idea, to see if anybody would actually be willing to pay for the product that I was offering at the time. And through that, I recognized that the original business idea I had wasn't going anywhere. And I continued that process time after time after time. BYU would continue to give me $500 to validate my business idea. And this was amazing because especially as a young entrepreneur who didn't really have any money, I wasn't working any crazy jobs at the time. I was paying for my food and rent and my tuition, and that's about all. This $500 meant a lot. I could run ads, I could go places, and I could do things that would allow me to validate these business ideas. So at your local universities or from your mentors and other groups around you, and there's specific funds you can find online as well for young entrepreneurs starting a business, you can specifically get resources that will help you validate your business ideas. You don't want to go through the process of starting a business, work on it for 6 months to a year or even longer, and recognize after the fact that nobody wanted your product, your service, or whatever else you were offering. The reason why you validate at the beginning is to ensure that you will have customers. And so there's resources out there that will literally give you money to go out and validate your ideas. Likewise, another amazing thing here at BYU, one of the other amazing resources is once you actually have validated your business and you start getting traction, they will give you up to $27,000 straight up without any equity taken. So BYU, I'm in that process right now for the company I'm currently working on, Interval, the virtual AI receptionist for automotive repair businesses. Since then, I've been able to get over $7,000 up to date from BYU with 0% equity. And it's not a loan. They straight up just give it to me because I'm a young entrepreneur who's starting a business that has validation and is growing and has traction. And so obviously, I know very specifics for BYU because that's my university, but for every university out there, there are funds, there's mentors, there's specific donors who will give back to their business programs, who will give to the entrepreneurship programs to ensure that the younger generation will continue to have the drive to innovate. As times get more expensive and everything keeps going up in price, I understand it could be a very big struggle as a young entrepreneur to say, okay, I'm not going to set aside time to work for a regular 9 to 5 job or work part time for a job while I'm in school, but I'm going to sit back and I'm going to work on my own business. And for a while, that could be very difficult because you probably won't be paying yourself. And if you do, it'll be very, very small amounts. So, this money you can get from donors, from funds, from online resources, from your local universities, this can be life changing to ensure your business can continue to grow. It might not be incredibly fast like you see in the VC world where you get millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars and you could immediately start paying yourself and employees and run and run and run with all those resources. But it's a start. As a young entrepreneur, you need to work with all the resources you're given, especially for the resources you're given for free. The other beautiful thing about these resources that a lot of universities and mentors give young entrepreneurs is there's other factors besides just the monetary value. Like I mentioned, BYU can give up to $27,000 for a young business, and that is amazing life-changing money for my young startup. But at the same time, they offer other resources, and other universities do this as well, for bookkeeping and legal services and accounting advice and other issues like that. I've also been able to go through and use 3D printers, materials, and other parts that have been able to help me grow my business. If you look at your local universities, you will find these machines that you can use, these products that are already out there, this new technology that you may not have had access to. They will give you these resources so you can continue to grow your business simply because you're a student. I guarantee you, if you go to your business school, if you go to the head of the department and say, this is the business I'm working on and I need legal advice, they will find you a lawyer who is willing to give you 30 minutes to an hour of their time for a free legal consultation, who will look over documents for you. They'll send you to an accountant who will help you fix all of your issues on your assets column. They will help you grow your business 100% free. These are the resources that are at the tip of your fingers if you just go out and you ask for them because you're a college student. All right, hopping into reason number 2. This is one of my personal favorites. It's a mantra that I've shared with almost every single young entrepreneur that I meet who is afraid to go all in on their business. Guys, reason number 2 is there's no better timing inside of your life to go all in on your business than when you're young. There's no better time. If you think about it, when you're in college, life is obviously stressful, but it's not as stressful as it's going to be. For the most part, obviously, there's a little asterisk by all these because there's going to be people who don't fit this exact mold. But for the most part, when you're in college, you don't have to worry about working a full-time job. You don't have any kids. Most people aren't married, so you don't have to worry about a spouse. I go to BYU, so that's a little bit different. But you don't have any kids. You don't have that spouse. You don't have that full-time job. Other reasons might be you don't have a mortgage, and there's just a lot less stress that you have to worry about when you're a college student. Obviously, you still have to go to your classes and you have to get good grades, and hopefully it'll help you propel better in the future. But if you're starting a business while you're young and in school, there's not very many stresses, to be quite honest with you. You can focus solely on school and your business, and it is the perfect time to get it done. Whereas if you wait till you're in your late 30s, your early 40s, your 50s, you always have something extra you have to be worrying about. You have to worry about making sure you could pay off your mortgage every month. You have to make sure you could pay for the food on your table every week. You have to make sure you're paying for your kids' sporting events and schooling and whatnot. There's so many more expenses that arise as your family and your life continues to grow and grow and grow. So if you start today as a young entrepreneur in college or a trade school or wherever you're at right now, this is the perfect opportunity to jump all in. Because in the grand scheme of things, sure, you can go work a part-time job all year and you can make anywhere between $20,000 and $40,000. That's amazing. But that money in the long run will have been used so much better if you could have started a profitable business. Or even if you didn't make any money from your business, The amount of life lessons you can learn inside of that time are insurmountable. It's literally, you can't even put a dollar amount to the life lessons you could learn, especially for all you college students out there. You'll resonate with this. The reason why you pay so much money to go to your university is so you can continue your education, you can learn, and hopefully be placed in a better job that will bring a better outcome. You pay a lot of money up front, so hopefully down the road, it pays off dividends in the future. That's exactly what starting a business when you're young can do. You may be missing out on that small amount of money from just working a part-time job while you're in school, but in the long run, that education you get from it, that experience, will propel you forward, and you're eventually going to make more money because of it. So I'm not just saying this from willy-nilly thoughts inside of my head. I have personal examples that I wrote down and thought about that I started while in college. And many of this, going back to my validation point on step number 1, many of these ideas absolutely sucked and they didn't go anywhere. And honestly, up until interval and besides the podcast, I haven't had any crazy businesses that have taken off. So I want to share some of these because this might be the perfect time for you to jump into a business where you're not entirely sure if it's going to work out. And if it doesn't work out, that's fine because you're young and you're allowed to experiment and figure out exactly what you want to do. Much like you taking classes in various fields to see what you want to study and what eventual job you want to work into, that's the same as starting your own business. It may not be the perfect thing in the long run, but if you can continue to just test and see what you like, what you dislike, what you hate, what you somewhat enjoy, if you can figure that out right now, that'll help you in your entrepreneurial journey as you continue going on. So a couple businesses that I started, I've mentioned some of these on the podcast before. I got invited on very, very early to work with my cousin and one other co-founder on a clothing company, an outdoor clothing company called Coda. I was super excited. I really enjoy hiking and running in the outdoors and going camping. So I thought I was going to be the perfect fit. I was the third co-founder and I was in charge of all the marketing online. And when we first launched, we were super excited. We thought everybody was going to be buying our shirts and everything that we had designed, our hats, all this amazing outdoor gear. But then after a very short amount of time, we realized none of us had any design skills. We never worked in the clothing industry, which is absolutely brutal, and we couldn't take it anywhere. So that was our first failure. But it taught me so much about online marketing. I learned how to post good TikTok videos. I learned how to sell things online. And so that was an amazing lesson I learned from it. And it also taught me I never once again want to jump into the fashion industry. Another business I tried, which wasn't very sustainable, it was something just to bring in a little bit of side cash, was I'd go door to door and ask people for their old clothing, and then I would go and donate it at a place like Plato's Closet, who pays you for your clothing, and then they resell it at their store locations, in their storefronts. So I'd literally go door to door here in Provo, Utah, and I'd tell people, I'd say, hey, I'm a college student, I'm trying to make a couple extra bucks. Do you have any old clothes that you don't wear anymore that I could potentially donate for you? I'll save you the trip to the donation center that I could turn in for a little bit of a profit because I do these in bulk. One bag of clothing wasn't going to bring in much, but a big 4, 5, 6 trash bags full were going to bring in a decent penny. So I go door to door and I would tell these people about it. What I learned from this life lesson is, yes, it's a great side hustle. I actually made a couple $100 doing it with not a crazy amount of work put in. But at the same time, it's not sustainable going door to door and asking people 24/7 for their old clothes. So I learned that I do not want to go door to door anymore. That is a huge life lesson inside of my personal life. This is one that's been working out. As you know, I started this podcast when I was a freshman at BYU. Many of you know the story that I finished my LDS mission and I recognized that I wanted to go and actually continue doing more service. And so one of the best ways I found for working on a business and serving others at the time was starting a podcast. And so this podcast of mine, it has been amazing. I've been able to network. I've been able to meet some amazing folks. I've been able to hear your messages, your struggles, the things you appreciate, the things you dislike inside of your life. All you listeners have made this worth it. And it's made me a better host. It's made me a better person so I could have more compassion inside of my life. I could not be more proud of where this podcast has come from. And that's because I started young and I was able to continue to grow it, and I'll be working on it for the rest of my life. Here's another business idea that absolutely tanked. I thought this one was going to be amazing, but since I was young, I wasn't afraid to fail and I wasn't afraid to start something and not have it go my way. I started a cleaning service. I called up about 10 local businesses. Within my first 10 cold calls, I found a business that was interested in me coming over and cleaning it. The issue was I had zero supplies and I didn't want to go buy all the supplies if it wasn't actually going to pan out. So I borrowed my roommate's vacuum. I got a bunch of Clorox wipes from the store and some old rags that I had lying around, and I went through and I started cleaning this business. I think I did a decent job. It took me a lot longer because I didn't have the right materials, but it taught me that cold calling is a very effective method for getting customers. Even though I didn't continue that business because I recognized it wasn't for me, I learned yet another life lesson. And here I am today with Interval. It's going great. I'm super excited. That's the trajectory I'm headed for the next few years now. And the amount of lessons I'll learn here are going to be undescribable. So, guys, the point I'm trying to make is when you're starting a business when you're young, it doesn't have to be revolutionary. It doesn't have to be the next best thing. It doesn't have to be paying you thousands and thousands of dollars. What it does have to do is teach you life lessons that you will continue to learn from. Recognize the things you dislike, recognize the things that you do like, and then grow your business from there. Okay, everybody, we have reached point number 3. This is the most important advice I think I could possibly ever offer on the podcast. The best reason why you should start a business while you're young and in college is because of the growing network you can create because of it. Guys, since I started this podcast and since I started working on Interval, the amount of people I have met is amazing. I can text anyone in my network right now and I can have instant advice. As soon as they see my message, I could be getting great advice from local business owners, from lawyers, from accountants, from anyone inside of my network. I can get advice because I prove to them that I am a young hustler and I'm ready to put in work and make a name for myself. When you're young, there are so many people that fit the standard mold of going to college, taking a few classes, doing average or decent in those classes, and then going on Indeed or going to these local events where you put your resume in the application of thousands of other students and you hope that you get the internship or you hope you get the full-time offer. If you can fit outside of that mold, you could do something a little bit different. For instance, starting a podcast, and you can invite people to network with you on that show or say, hey, I have a young startup and I need some advice. Would you be willing to offer me some? I have used that line over 1,000 times on LinkedIn, and you would be amazed. So out of the thousands of messages I've shared and sent online with people, I have no idea who they are. I have been able to connect with people simply because they recognize I'm a young hustler. Then growing with Interval and all these other things I've been doing inside of my life, it's amazing to see people who are in my corner, even if I don't know them super well. They're still in my corner rooting me on and they're there for me when I need advice or help or anything like that. The network you can create when you're a young entrepreneur is something you can never discredit. It's something that's more valuable than any money will ever be at this stage of life. If you could create a solid network where you can continue in your life, knowing you always have somebody in the corner when you're about to get knocked down and you could look to the side and you see your coach there standing beside you, telling you to get up and keep fighting, there is nothing more valuable than that. Now, a piece of advice I would share when you're actually trying to find a mentor, especially somebody who's older than you, make them offers that they can't refuse. Nowadays, it's very, very difficult to message somebody on LinkedIn or send them an email, or maybe you know a friend of a friend. It's very hard to straight up cold connect with these people sometimes. So you need to make them an offering that they can't resist. For a lot of these older folks that I want to be mentors inside of my life, it's very easy in if I say, hey, I have a podcast. I would love to interview you on it. That has been an amazing form of networking that I have available inside of my life. Another message you could share is, this one's a little bit more difficult now. You can't necessarily always take somebody out for lunch. But one thing that would disrupt the mold of an older person that you're trying to use as a mentor is rather than say, hey, can we go out to lunch and I can get some feedback? Ask them if you can buy them lunch and hear some of their life stories. Once again, this one can be difficult because a lot of times people are so busy. If it's someone totally random, they won't spend the time with you. But if you can change that mold of, hey, let's go get some lunch and say, me as the young entrepreneur, as the young hustler, I'm going to buy you, Mr. Successful Entrepreneur, I'm going to buy you lunch. That could fit outside the mold and help you make a name for yourself. Whatever your offering is, make sure it fits outside that mold because so many people are going to do it the standard way over and over and over again. And that's why it's not going to work for them. You have to figure out a way to network outside of the norm. One last piece of advice I would share as a young entrepreneur is connect with other young entrepreneurs. As I previously mentioned, soon I'm going to be starting interviews with other people inside of my network that have started successful businesses while they're young, while they're in college. The amount of people I can connect with every single day and seek advice from, or just connect on a one-on-one scale is amazing. As you can see in this new office that I'm in, just across the hall, all these rooms next to me are other young startups filled with BYU students who are working on their own businesses. There's marketing people, there's people who are running software businesses, service-based businesses, product businesses. Right next door, I have a shoe company that's working. Anytime I need advice, I could simply knock on their door and start connecting with them. I can also give advice on podcasting or interval or anything that people might need help with. The amount of network opportunities you have with people who are your age are going to be amazing. You never know how much they can help you now or in the future. So continue to grow your network with those around you. Guys, that's the message I had for you on today's episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast. It's a message I have personally lived and believe in completely. As you know, if you've been listening to the show for a long time, I'm not a massive fan of college, but what I am a fan of is starting a business when you're in college. There's so many amazing opportunities that come from it, and I know you could benefit from it just as much as I have. If you enjoyed today's episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast, make sure to share it with somebody who you think would benefit from hearing today's words. If anyone would like to join my network, make sure to shoot me a message in the episode description down below. I'll have all of my links where you could send me a message on social media, email me, or any other methods that please you. And guys, at the end of the day, just remember it's going to be okay. You're going to be able to start an amazing business. If you fail, that's okay because you're going to find something even better down the road. And we'll see you next time.